Okay, so it's just hit 10 o'clock now, so we might get started. So we've got a fair bit to get through today. Thank you everyone for joining us and welcome to the webinar today. You would have seen in the sign up, but today we're focusing on how to manage packaging sustainability information through the National Product Catalogue. And today we're lucky to be joined by the team at GS1 who will take us through a little bit about that. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today. I'd also like to pay my respects to elders past and present. I also acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands on which you all work today and any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people participating in this webinar. So for those of you who may not know me, my name is Alison and I am the Member Resource and Program Coordinator at APCO. And today our Compliance Manager, Chella Ford, will present some of the work that we've been doing at APCO around enhancing technology and conversations that we've been having with the team at GS1 on how the National Product Catalogue may support our members in collecting data on their packaging and to support with reporting. Again, as I mentioned, we're joined by the team at GS1, so we have Mark and Murray on the line who will today talk us through who GS1 is, if you're not familiar with them, and also how the National Product Catalogue works and what changes might need to come into play to ensure that we can obviously utilise that for members in collecting that packaging sustainability information. So if you have any questions today, please do feel free to either pop them in the chat box or directly contact myself through the chat box as well if you'd prefer to send the question anonymously. We also are recording the session so that if anyone is unable to make it today, we can share a recording with them afterwards. But for now, I'll pass over to Chella to get us started. Thanks, Chella.
Great, thanks, Alison. Hi, everyone. My name is Chella Ford, and I'm the Compliance Manager at APCO. So before I introduce you to Mark and Murray from GS1 Australia, I just wanted to do a bit of a frame up to help contextualize the opportunity and why we think this is a good opportunity to discuss with our members. In the last couple of years, APCO has really positioned itself to be more than just compliance to the Australian Packaging Covenant and reporting. And since 2018, we've started offering more than just a framework to report against and implementing the SPGs. So we've since introduced the 2025 National Packaging Targets, the ARL program, and soon Anti-Pack Plastic Pack. And we're also working on other things in the space of reuse and recycled content. And as APCO members take these strides towards more sustainable packaging outcomes, so too does our requirement to streamline and unify how we collect and report on information, as well as how we present these insights back to our members to support their sustainable packaging journey. And so we've made a start already. We started improving our technology to help streamline these things for our members. So we've made a start. We've introduced a new website and member center for you guys, and we will introduce an interactive learning platform to help you more with the education side and monitoring, upskilling yourselves there. And next year we'll be focusing on enhancing the reporting tool and working with Prep Design to enhance the packaging recyclability evaluation portal. So as mentioned, as programs grow and we strive towards packaging sustainability, there is that increased requirement to streamline and unify how we collect and report on information. So last year, GS1 Australia approached us and identified this opportunity to utilise the National Product Catalogue. And after a bit of back and forth, here we are today to present the opportunity to allow our members to utilise the National Product Catalogue to support our members with their reporting requirements and their own packaging sustainability goals. And the objective today, there's two objectives today. We want to determine whether there is an interest from our members to utilise the National Product Catalogue, and we want to invite you to provide feedback and interest in this project. So now I'd like to hand it over to Mark and Murray from GS1, who will go into a bit more depth about this opportunity. Thank you.
Thanks, Chela. So as Chela mentioned, my name is Mark Blittenfall. I'm part of the service engagement team at GS1, and my role is really to help members with some of the services we provide. So things like the National Product Catalogue. We've got a number of suppliers who use it now to publish data to recipients. And so part of my role is just to explore if there's any other ways we could use that National Product Catalogue and enhance the value that people using it get from it. And then Murray's our implementation manager, so he's more involved from a technical perspective in terms of implementing National Product Catalogue with recipients and suppliers. So between us today, we will be able to answer most of the questions that you come up with. If there's anything we can't answer, we'll come back with answers. But we had a session like this on Monday, and we were able to answer all of the questions that we had. So as Chela's mentioned, feel free to put questions through in the chat, and we can address those as we go. Otherwise, if you have questions towards the end, we will have a bit of a session, and we'll break the session up a little bit with some Q&A opportunities as we go. So I guess today, from our perspective, it's really discussing with you guys and giving a bit of a sense of how we think we can support packaging sustainability reporting requirements by using the National Product Catalogue. And that's a bit of a discussion we've been having with APCO for some time now. We've done quite a bit of preparatory work on that, and that's really what we're going to share with you today. So as Chela said in the beginning, there may be people in the audience who are not that familiar with GS1, so I'll spend a little bit of time giving you an introduction, just letting you know what GS1 does. I know before I started working here, I had very limited knowledge, and it's a bit of an intriguing name, so I hope to clear some of that up for you. And then we'll talk about the need that we've explored together, because there's definitely a need, and I think most people who are monitoring the news will acknowledge the fact that there's more and more information around packaging sustainability and the circular economy. So we'll talk about some of the need, and then the data model, and I'll talk about the NPC in quite a bit of detail and the work that we've done in exploring new attributes that we might be able to add to the NPC just to make it easier for people to be able to publish their packaging sustainability information through to a body like APCO, but potentially also to other recipients of the data. And then we'll spend a little bit of time looking at the different types of data exchange models that we could consider. And obviously you're welcome to think about these, reflect on them, and then provide feedback later on if today is more an opportunity just to get the information and to start being able to reflect on it. And then, as I said, we'll have some time for next steps and sharing questions and answers towards the end of the presentation. So then, just to start with the exploration of, or the explanation of what GS1 is. For those who don't know, we're a global standards organization. Most people are familiar with a barcode, and that's really what we started our journey doing, is introducing the G10, which really is the same as a barcode. And then we've developed a whole lot of other standards around that. So the G10 is really about monitoring and tracking, collecting information on products, but we've got things like GLNs, which are the same sort of thing, but for locations. And we've got a number of different ways of sharing information using standards. We're a not-for-profit organisation. We're a global not-for-profit organisation. So each member organisation is really an independent unit, but we are all governed by the same standards. And so any standards we develop, we make sure that those can be implemented on a global scale, because obviously if one organisation or one country has a standard that's different to another, that makes it really hard for people to have, I guess, global alignment across those standards. We're also user-driven and governed, so we've got a board which is made up of GS1 members, be those recipients or suppliers, and a lot of the initiatives we undertake are actually driven by those member requirements. And that's part of what we're doing today is we recognise that our members are going to need to share packaging sustainability information, and we think there's an opportunity to do that on the NPC, because a lot of them are using the National Product Catalogue at the moment for that. And then again, inclusive and collaborative, we run a series of user groups. So at the moment, we run something called the National Product Catalogue Advisory Group. And that's really just a forum where people who are using the National Product Catalogue get to meet and to discuss the way that they're using it and to plan for further use of the National Product Catalogue as well. So it's really about trying to get information from the members and potential users and trying to develop the service offering based on those requirements. So as I've probably alluded to, what we're really doing is trying to create a common foundation for business that allows people to identify products. So things like the G10 allow you to identify a product, capture information around that product. So that's the service, the National Product Catalogue allows you to capture that information and then share that information between trading partners. So on things like the G10 and the GLN and different assets that you might be managing or tracking through the supply chain. So essentially what we're trying to do is enable visibility by allowing members and trading partners to exchange that data between each other. And by doing that, we're wanting to empower businesses to grow, to improve efficiency, safety, security, and sustainability. So again, we've got things like traceability advisory group, which has really become quite important at the moment to try and understand the evolution of traceability and how we can support that. So outside of the standards, we also provide a number of services to support those standards. We've got 4 buckets that those fall into. I'm not going to go through these in a lot of detail, but just in that first bucket, we've got things like quality assurance. So we provide a barcode verification service where suppliers can get their barcodes verified, and basically the retailer or the recipient who's ranging those products has assurance that those products are going to scan at point of sale without issue. We provide a similar service for EDI Certify, which just ensures that people can test EDI messaging before they implement it and to make sure that it's going to work as expected. The second bucket is really around capacity building and implementation, and that's where education and training comes into play, and our consulting service. And that's really just making sure that our members who are going to implement those services have the knowledge and the capacity and the support to be able to do that. In that third bucket, we've got item master data and digital content, and that's really what we're talking about today. That's enabling the exchange of that data between trading partners. So being able to create, manage, and syndicate accurate product information, whether that's B2B, as in the case of the National Product Catalogue, or B2C information, sort of e-commerce digital assets. We enable that through a service that we offer called Smart Media. And then the fourth bucket is really around safety and traceability. So our recall service, which allows suppliers to recall products off shelves when that's necessary, and also like KateNet, which allows people to track the process or products as they move through the supply chain. That's really a bit of background on GS1 and the sorts of services that we offer to support the standards. From that, I'll go in and look at the need to be able to capture and share packaging sustainability information. So at the moment, it's not mandated, but I think there's a number of indications on the horizon that kind of tell us that it's going to become more and more important. There's incentives both formal through legislation and informal through increasing consumer sentiment that are going to incentivize brand owners to start recording and sharing this information with recipients. So we also know that there's going to be those changes to retail and supply chain regulations in around 2025. And so it's going to become necessary to start recording packaging components. And that's where we think that potentially the National Product Catalogue can support that, because I think we'd all acknowledge there's definitely an increasing need for manufacturers and people that are dealing in those sort of packaged goods to be able to capture that information. And so recognizing that need, we kind of had a bit of a discussion with APCO about the sort of data model that would be required to support this. And we acknowledge that it's fairly complex, because we've got to try and strike a balance between detail and granularity required in some of these packaging sustainability reporting requirements, but also making it easy to do. And we also want to make sure that we capture all of the information around mandatory attributes without having to make things too comprehensive. So we've got to strike that balance, because if you make things too difficult and you require too much information from organizations, it becomes really onerous and really difficult for them to support that. The other thing that we kind of felt we needed to take into account is the fact that any data model that we propose needs to be validated with manufacturers and recipients of the data who are members of GS1 and APCO. And that's really what today is about. Just, I guess, giving you a sense of the data model that we're thinking about, explaining a little bit about how that's going to work, and then allowing the opportunity for us to collect feedback from the members and to be able to modify or adjust anything depending on that feedback. So that's really why we'd welcome your feedback after today's session and even during the session today. So I guess I look through the list of attendees and I can see there's a mixture of people who are fairly familiar with the National Product Catalogue, and then there's probably going to be a fair share of those who have no idea about what the National Product Catalogue is. So just like I did with the explanation of GS1, I'll take a little bit of time just to give you a bit of background on the National Product Catalogue, explain what it is and how it works. Essentially, I may have alluded to this, but it's really a way of allowing trading partners to exchange product information to facilitate the movement of goods through the supply chain. We like to say that it's the ultimate solution for companies that are invested in good quality data in the supply chain, from supplier to retailer. And there's a number of things like validation rules and data quality reports that we've introduced to the National Product Catalogue over time, I guess, as I say, in conjunction with people that are using it, but also because of the fact that we really do think that data quality is really important, and we want to support the ability for trading partners to be able to provide that high quality data to the recipient trading partners. So it's really an online tool that automates the data sharing process, and by doing that, it reduces the number of manual touch points and opportunities for human error. So I guess you could think of it as a master data repository where all of the master data is collected, put into one place, maintained in one place, and then you can share that master data with different recipients, and you don't have to replicate and duplicate effort. It is a little bit of effort to set up in the beginning, to collect all of that information, to make sure that it's accurate and to enter it. But once you've done that, maintaining it becomes a lot easier than maintaining a whole lot of different sources of data within an organization. It also has the ability to integrate directly from core systems. So there's a number of ways of integrating data from ERP systems directly into the National Product Catalogue. And then there's end-to-end integration from the National Product Catalogue through to the recipients. So there's a lot of automation and integration involved, which is there to support ease of use, I think, for people that are using it. And as I've alluded to as well, it's been developed with industry over time. So we've incorporated critical business rules into the tool to make sure that we can meet those requirements. And we would basically undertake the same thing at the moment. We'd develop a range of data validation rules to make sure that when you're entering your packaging sustainability information, we're making sure that the right fields are being entered or populated with the right sort of information. And again, the application of those rules is all about validating the data that gets provided and making sure that that data is of a high quality. So again, it's really just trying to support members and trading partners with high quality information and a tool that allows you to exchange that sort of data. So just a brief overview of how it works. I've put a little schematic in here. If you look on the left-hand side of that, we've got what we call publishers of the information. So that might be a brand owner, a supplier, or a distributor of a product. They basically upload that information. So that's really that process of going and sourcing all of your master data and putting it into that central repository. So you check your product range, you prepare the data, and you can load that either through a user interface, and we've actually upgraded the user interface to make it even easier to use now through NPC Express, or you can integrate that from an ERP system, as I said. We then apply those data validation rules, so there's product and pricing validations that get applied, and again, that's based on industry requirements. Once the data passes that validation step, it'll be published to the National Product Catalogue, and then that data can be synchronized to the recipient's ERP systems. So that's really a real-time end-to-end sort of integration. And then just to point out that product data, there's a one-to-many relationship, but pricing data, there's a one-to-one relationship. So when you publish your item data, your product data, you just publish it once and you don't really have to do too much in terms of maintaining that data. The same data gets published to the recipients with one or two changes depending on the recipient. So there's a process of making the supplier ready for each recipient that they publish data to. But there is that one-to-one relationship with pricing data so that you can publish specific pricing data to specific recipients. But I guess for the purposes of publishing packaging sustainability data, it's really that product or that item level data that we're interested in. So again, you collect that data once, you publish it once, and it gets published through to your different data recipients. I guess why we thought that potentially the National Product Catalogue would be a good way of supporting this project. It's really about reducing the cost of exchanging that data, and the inefficiencies of having a whole range of different platforms that you use to do that sort of thing. So we recognize that within businesses, there's probably a range of different people within the business who are filling a range of different forms to different recipients of that data. And it's about collecting all that data in one central repository, maintaining it in that repository, and then being able to share it with different retailers. So it's just taking away that duplication that businesses often find themselves having to do. And it's about ensuring high quality data as well. And so when you've got that framework, it allows you to do things like recall and EDI and digital content in a much more efficient way, because all of the information is aligned, it's standards based, and it's coming from one common source. Other benefits, I guess, especially in the grocery industry. So I know there's people from hardware in a range of different industries, and that's maybe an area where the National Product Catalogue's a little bit less well known than it is in the grocery industry. But I think we're trying to look at the same sort of principle, where in that industry we've had a lot of automation. There's been a lot of work done in terms of sharing that information, making sure that it's checked and validated and can be trusted. And that's essentially the same sort of benefit that the National Product Catalogue is able to offer, not just to the grocery industry in terms of exchanging the packaging sustainability information, but to other industries as well. It'll also make sure that the requirements are agreed up front, and that we put those validation rules in place, and that we can assure that the data is going to meet industry requirements in terms of exchanging packaging sustainability information. At the moment, we're actually using the National Product Catalogue to support things like container deposit schemes. And so that's one way that I think APCO requirements are very similar to those container deposit scheme requirements. So essentially, we're leveraging the National Product Catalogue in a similar way for those CDS schemes. And we really see being able to report packaging sustainability for APCO reporting requirements and other reporting requirements is just an extension of work that we're already doing. And then obviously it's being used at the moment to enhance trading relationships, to make the exchange of data as easy as possible. And we see a benefit for that in terms of using it for this purpose. So I've shared quite a bit of information there. What we have got now is a bit of an opportunity just to break for a couple of minutes and take any questions that anyone might have. So again, either unmute yourselves, or if you want to use the chat function to submit those questions, we'll just give it a bit of time to provide that opportunity for you to do that.
Mark, we did have one that came through a little bit earlier, which you have since touched on. But I guess just for further clarification, Benjamin asked, how can we access the National Product Catalogue? So maybe just talking a little bit about how that access through the membership works, if possible.
Okay. So the National Product Catalogue is a service that we offer to members. But if you're not a member, it's worth reaching out anyway and seeing how we can support you. But it's one of the services we offer to support members. It's something that you would register for. So we've got a little link on our website. You can click on that link, and it basically takes you through to registration. That registration then gets passed through to someone who's a member of the team that I work in, and we'll contact you and just explore your requirement for using the National Product Catalogue, make sure that you're going to get value from it, that it's the right thing for you to be doing. And then if it does work out that it's a good way of you exchanging master data, then we'll sign you up for it, we'll register for you, and a member of our National Product Catalogue support team will be in contact with you. They help suppliers to prepare their data to be published to different recipients, and then they take you through the process of actually publishing that data. There is a fee for use of the National Product Catalogue as well. All GS1 fees are already dependent on the turnover of a member or subscribing organisation, so there's not kind of one size fits all, but depending on your turnover band, the fees adjusted based on that. So I think maybe what I'll do is share my details with the APCO team as well, so that if you've got those sorts of queries or you want to find out a little bit more, I'm happy for you to contact me, and then I can have that discussion with you and give you a little bit more detail. But as a brief summary, that's really how you'd start to explore using the National Product Catalogue. There's also quite a bit of information on our website. So that might, if you want to have a bit of an exploration of that before contacting us, that's a good source and a good place to start. There's a lot of information there on National Product Catalogue, which will give you a bit more detail I'm sharing with you today. But as I say, if you prefer to have a conversation, I'm happy for you to contact us, or you can dial the 1300 barcode number and they'll put you in contact with someone like myself as well.
Thanks, Mark. We might pop the GS1 website in the chat box for everyone as well. Another question that came through, which is, as someone with no prior knowledge of the NPC, do you service the textile, apparel and footwear industry? And then we've got another question just down below about hardware retailers as well. So a little bit more about who's currently within that membership base and utilising the catalogue.
Yeah, at the moment, it does tend to be the healthcare sector and the grocery sector. So things like hardware and textiles would probably be new areas for us to propose using the National Product Catalogue. We're actually involved with one of the textile traders at the moment, exploring the use of some of our services like Digital Link and the National Product Catalogue, but that's in its infancy. So I'd say that there's a long history of using it in food and grocery and in healthcare, but some of those other areas we'd need to explore those areas. So the tool exists, but we'd want to have a bit of a discussion with recipients and then potentially with suppliers to find out their feelings about using it as a tool to exchange. This is information specifically, but potentially there's also benefits in exchanging wider supply chain related information.
Thanks, Mark. And the next one, I'm not sure, Murray, this one might be for you, which came through asking, how does GS1 ensure the security of the data in the NPC? And at that same time, who owns the data that's being put into the NPC as well?
Thanks, Alison. First off, the ownership of the data remains with the supplier of the data, so the brand owner or the distributor of the data. They're the owners. The NPC is really the facilitator for exchanging that data between the suppliers and the recipients. From a security point of view, probably the main thing I can say is we've been doing this for many years. We have very extensive security policies. We have external security assessments on a very regular basis. The organisation which hosts and builds on behalf of GS1 is probably the largest provider globally in terms of master data management in data pools. So we have got very extensive processes in place in terms of security. We also provide pricing. So obviously if pricing's been on the NPC for many years, it needs to be very secure. So to date, we've never had any security related issues, but we continually have those external reviews and internal policies as well. We can also provide, if need be, we can provide a summary of our security assessments in a broken down in a minimised format, but we can provide that information on a case by case basis if needed.
Thanks, Murray. And the next question that's come through, we're going into, I am aware the team will be talking through in the next section. So Brian's asked, what sort of data do you envisage being input? Do you have an example? Which I think is a perfect segue to the next section, Mark. So I might pass back over to you.
Yep, thank you, Alison. And thanks for all the questions. As I say, feel free to ask more as we go along. It's a really good discussion, and I think it gives us a bit of a sense of where people's heads are at in terms of understanding how we might use the National Product Catalogue. So some good questions there, thank you. So I guess to try and answer that question, and that'll come through in the next couple of slides, as I've mentioned, the National Product Catalogue is really that platform to facilitate capture and sharing of packaging sustainability information. It's been used in a lot of other data sharing. And so as part of our exploration, we've actually gone and looked at the overlap between APCO and GS1 members, and then also factored in the usage of the National Product Catalogue. So through our investigation, we've recognised that 70% of APCO members are also members of GS1. 30% of APCO members are already using the National Product Catalogue, and I guess that's where the thought started in terms of maybe using the National Product Catalogue for those APCO members who are already using it to provide the information that APCO requires from them. I guess just the questions around the use of the National Product Catalogue for hardware and textiles. That's an area that for those industries we're happy to explore. I definitely think we could use a tool like the National Product Catalogue in those industries to share that supply chain data and that packaging sustainability data. So that 30% is, I think, a significant number of people who are members of APCO and using the National Product Catalogue. So I think there's quite a bit of benefit to be derived to put these attributes onto the NPC and to allow the publishing of the attributes through for those who are using it at the moment. But then I think, as I mentioned, I think there's also that opportunity for people that aren't using the National Product Catalogue at the moment, but potentially exploring that as an option. And then we've also seen that 43 APCO members are actually involved in our National Product Catalogue advisory groups. And that to us gives us a sense that there's a number of APCO members who are really invested and involved in using the National Product Catalogue as it stands at the moment. So potentially for those organisations who are really, really invested, there's a lot of efficiency to be gained by using the NPC to fulfil other reporting requirements that potentially it's not doing for them at the moment. So based on that, we went and did some development work, and I think this is really where we start answering that question. We were able to identify, really looking at the questions that APCO requires answers to, we identified that we'd probably have to introduce 17 new attributes to the National Product Catalogue to take account of those reporting requirements. We realised that at the moment, the National Product Catalogue is really supporting the main packaging material requirements, but we can extend that in terms of recycled and renewable materials requirements to all levels of packaging. So again, we're going to have to do a little bit of development work, but it's not something that's too difficult for us to do. And then, but related to that, really people that are reporting to APCO are going to need to publish all packaging materials. So again, we'd have to do a little bit of development work to facilitate that. And then if we applied those new attributes, we'd make sure that the business validation rules are going to be activated for APCO only members. So we don't necessarily want to affect any of the people that are using the catalogue at the moment for other purposes. So we're going to be very careful in terms of what we turn on and off and how we manage access to different parts of the catalogue for different user groups as well. So again, standards-based, our approach is really going to look at capturing that packaging sustainability information at the GTIN level, which is really that base or outer packaging unit. So making sure that we can really accurately associate that information with the GTIN that it's linked to. And then by doing that, you'll then be able to take an external data source, so things like production or sales data, to derive the volumetric information that you're needing in order to fulfill your APCO annual reporting requirements. And again, I think usage is not just around APCO reporting requirements, but potentially suppliers may need to be able to start exchanging some of this information with recipients. And so there's another use case there outside of what we've specifically been considering for APCO reporting. So just a little bit more detail around the types of attributes. We'd be looking to develop 14 new local attributes. So those would be specific to the Australian market, not supported by the global community, but also 3 new global attributes. So those would be things that would be used in conjunction or more widely globally sorts of attributes that other countries and other organisations would be looking to try and capture. We'd also have to introduce 2 new code lists. So you can see there is quite a bit of development work that's going to be required. And that's why we're really wanting to get feedback and make sure that if we do the development work, that's going to address users' requirements. And also that if we're going to do the development work, there really is a need and people are going to be able to get value from adding these attributes to the National Product Catalogue. So as we've said, all packaging material is going to be able to be entered. So things like material type, material percentage, recoverable status at all levels of packaging. So we've kind of mentioned the fact that at the moment, it's really only been captured with the primary packaging material, and there's only ever been a requirement to do that. But we've also mentioned the fact that more and more people are needing to provide more and more detail on the different levels of packaging. And so we have the ability to support that, and it seems like there's going to be a need to start trying to do that. And then again, business validation rules that we've mentioned will be developed, and those will be really implemented to support APCO members to make sure that they're providing quality data when they provide that. So in terms of an example of a question, I think I'll hand over to Murray. Again, we've gone through 17 of these questions. We're not going to share every single question today. We thought we'd take one example and talk through that, and that should provide you with a bit of an understanding of the sorts of questions and the way that we could support answers to those questions in the NPC. So Murray, I'll hand over to you at this stage.
Thanks, Mark. I think Mark's explained it pretty well so far. So what we're looking at is, as Mark said, that we've got 17 attributes. Clearly within the APCO annual report, there's more than 17, but these are the ones with the help of APCO we've identified as being ones which work well with the NPC, and providing the building blocks within the NPC, we believe will help with that annual reporting task. So for this particular example, it's within the report under the leadership section under consumer engagement, and the basic question is how many baseline metrics, and baseline metrics being either SKUs or product categories or tons of packaging, have packaging labelling that encourages active consumer engagement in packaging sustainability. So this is talking at a product level. So our approach to this type of question is to put an attribute or a field within the NPC which says, does packaging labelling encourage active consumer engagement in the packaging sustainability? So that's just a single entry at the primary, or what for the NPC people base level. It's a simple Boolean true-false entry, and our logic is that when the 12 months period comes in, it's time to do out the annual report. Then an extract is taken out of the NPC, which has this information. So it's take this information, work out which particular products are applicable with a positive result, and then multiply by either the sales volume or the production volumes that output the result, and that gives you the result. So our thoughts are that it's sort of more of a business as usual approach. So as new items are added, filling the attributes for the APCO questionnaire for later in the year just become a normal part of business. As things change, etc., that also comes into play. We also have some attributes which have a date component. So if the answer to the question is positive, then the next question becomes, what date was this came into play? So after a period of time, then that particular attribute may become null because the dates exceeded a certain range of 2 years, 3 years, etc., such as the examples below. So that's really the key logic. It's a little bit of a turning around of the way that you normally fill in data. So it's not taking one single figure at the end of the year. It's really having those building blocks to come up with what we probably consider is probably very accurate data, and it's timely data. It's not a working backwards from a period of time. It's having that information there up front. So that's probably the main things from my point of view. If any questions in that regard?
We have had a few come through the chat box. So the first one was from Ted, who's asked if the program will be launched globally. I'm assuming that's in reference to the NPC itself. Is it only accessible to Australian businesses at this stage, or is it globally accessible?
Mark, or do you want me to take that?
I think, Murray, you're probably better placed.
Yeah. The NPC is what we call a data pool, and it services the Australian and New Zealand marketplaces. It is accessible from anywhere in the world, but generally it's our customers or our members are predominantly Australian, New Zealand based. What Mark alluded to before is we have some global attributes as well. So we're part of what's called the Global Data Synchronization Network. So it's a program where we have similar data pools globally, and we all try and share similar attributes. So a supplier international supplier can deal with the Australian market the same way they can deal with the European or the American markets, etc. But as quite a few of these fields are very specific and the questions are very specific, they're probably more locally based than globally based. I
guess there's the potential that it could be used as a global solution, but that would be quite long term, and there probably need to be a lot of alignment globally, and it might be rolled out country by country. So because it's a standards based thing, there's that potential to be able to share the information. But at the moment, because we're developing those 14 local attributes, those aren't going to be available globally. At some point, if globally they decided those were useful attributes, then those would probably be implemented on a global scale. But that would probably be very long-term rollout. But I guess just the fact that packaging sustainability is becoming more and more topical across the globe, there's maybe potential of that being a use case for global exchange of that sort of data.
We're certainly seeing a lot more in the European sector. So there's lots of sustainability related fields or attributes globally, but predominantly we had to look at new ones for the APCO questions just because of the specific nature of the question. So we had very similar things, but not quite the same.
And I just might jump in there. There's, again, we've been having conversations at APCO with GS1 for, I think, over a year now. So working quite closely to see where there's alignment in the existing National Product Catalogue data collection sets versus what, again, as Murray said, it is quite specific to APCO reporting. And that kind of ties in really well to another question here from Ted about how will the data be shared and linked to APCO. Murray and Mark, are you able to provide some more detail on that, if possible?
We've actually got a slide that's probably a good one to go to now, and that's really around the data exchange model. So at the moment, there's three ideas that we're considering or proposing. So I guess the way in which the data gets shared a lot between suppliers and retailers or recipients of the data is through that M2M integration. And that allows those publishers of the data to publish directly to a recipient. So in the case of APCO, if we decided that maybe that M2M integration is a really good way of doing it, we might look at something like that. And that just allows the supplier or the brand owner or the manufacturer to publish that data directly to APCO. So it goes between supplier and APCO in an M2M integration. But there are other ways that we might look at sharing that data. So potentially we could have a flat file extract from the NPC for those required attributes. And that could be what gets provided through to APCO. The supplier might also make that extract, link it to their production or their sales data, create the report and then submit the report through to APCO. So those are really the three ways, either a very integrated way through machine-to-machine integration, or else a bit more of a customized ad hoc way of extracting the required data, linking it with sales data or volume data, and then generating reports that could be provided through to APCO.
Thanks, Mark. And just back to the global attributes, Murray, you touched on it slightly. We've got a question here about what are the new global attributes. So there are, I noticed on slide 22, I think it was when we were talking about the attributes. It's indicated 3 new global attributes. Are you able to provide a little bit more detail about what those ones specifically may be alluding to?
So these are existing attributes, and they're linked to code lists. So in these particular examples, how many of these baseline metrics are made from recycled material? The sustainability feature code attribute, which is a standard global attribute. There's a series of code lists associated with that, including made from recycled material and made from renewable material. So both of those could be used to respond to questions 2A, 2B, and 2C is an existing attribute called has packaging been optimized for recycling or renewable content. So that's also an existing one. So that gives us some steps forward. So these are just existing ones which happen to be a very good match.
Thanks, Murray. We've had another couple of questions come through to me. So will there be an opportunity to include packaging detail in the NPC on all levels of packaging, or is it only primary packaging at this stage?
It's all levels depending on the need. So the initial example was a per product basis. So in that particular example, we'd only have that question at the consumer unit or the base unit. But there's other packaging questions which need at a per packaging layer basis. So that's how we'd build those out. And certainly we can have the material content can be at every level. It's also repeatable too. So we've got a lot of scope. To date, we probably haven't been using the packaging material, packaging type very extensively because it hasn't really been the demand from the retailers, but we're getting that demand. And also if we have demand from our suppliers as well, then we can start gearing that up to exploit it a little bit more.
Thanks, Murray. We've got another question here. How will SKUs with multiple components with different data be managed at a SKU level or at a GTN level?
I guess that really talks to that repeatability of the fields, doesn't it, Murray?
It does, and also the fact that you can have the linkages. Each GTN is a separate packaging level in its own right, so that within a product you can have multiple GTNs or multiple packaging records, so multiple records within the NPC, which are all linked together. So it does allow for that different component levels, but as Mark alluded to, we can also do repeats of material type, product type, etc.
All linked to the same GTN.
Correct.
Yep.
And I think that then ties really well to this other question that's come through to me, which is about how will APCO know via publishing from the NPC that a specific SKU should be included in the report, so that if they've got multiple SKUs in the NPC, but they haven't necessarily been sold during a reporting period, how will APCO know which ones should be considered or be shared with APCO?
Maybe I guess we can, so the brand owner can publish particular SKUs to particular recipients. So basically you can choose to publish your whole portfolio of products, but you can also choose to publish specific products through. So that way the brand owner or the supplier can manage what information gets published to which recipients of that data.
Thanks, Mark. And probably this one's a bit of I'm assuming a general response question. How long does it typically take businesses to set up the NPC for their company?
That can vary. It just depends on the size of their catalogue. So we've got companies that have hundreds of items, and that does take a bit of time to publish that. It also depends how much data you've actually got collected, because a lot of the work actually depends on sourcing all of that information. And we know that in a lot of organizations, different parts of the organization have different bits of the information that are required. So it's really how long is a piece of string. Sort of it depends on the quality of the data that we're starting with, and it depends on the number of products. But for small companies that have good quality data, it can be a matter of days. But for larger companies where they're having to source the data, it can take us a bit of time. As I said, there is a bit of support that we offer through our NPC support team. So they're there to kind of guide a supplier or a manufacturer in the process of doing that. And I mentioned our consulting area of the business in that those 4 buckets of services that GS1 offers. Sometimes if it's a really big project, what we will do is get the consulting team out there to go and do a bit of an audit to help compile the data and to help publish the data. So there's a range of different options, but it's quite hard to give you a time frame. It probably needs a bit of investigation on a case-by-case basis, but there is that support to help in that sort of understanding, and then to provide support in terms of collecting, collating, and publishing the information. But again, if people have got individual circumstances, they're free to reach out to me, and we can have a look through those on a case-by-case basis.
Thanks, Mark. And Murray, I was just thinking, in terms of the slide that's up at the moment, you've obviously got there in the attribute type a date. Are you able to clarify how the date could potentially be used for the various fields within the NPC?
Yes, for the ones in question, so this one has packaging being optimised for recycling or renewable content. In this example, the date would, when the supplier enters true, it has been updated, then the expectation would be that a date would be entered when that occurred. And over a period of time, if after say 6 years, that same entry becomes null because there's only a limited time where you'd expect to see ongoing updates and ongoing changes and ongoing optimization. So it's really just to make sure that the information is current when it's being provided. So the dates only come into these types of questions, but it's just really ensuring, as I said, currency.
I think that's really important for questions relating to sustainable packaging guidelines. I know when we were talking through this, part of the, I guess, feedback we give to members is that typically businesses should be reviewing their packaging against the SPGs every 3 to 5 years. So having a date within the attribute type really supports that, to be able to say, okay, well, once we hit this certain time frame and it's now been more than 5 years, we need to consider re-reviewing it as well. So there's definitely benefit there. We've had another question that's come through, which I think I can probably support on as well. So how will APCO use this data? Will it replace any of the current reporting requirements? So the APCO annual report will continue. It is a covenant obligation, so it won't completely replace it. Essentially, the thought process between the GS1 and APCO teams was to see this as a data collection method for companies. Through feedback from members, we find that there's a vast array of data collection methods being used by members currently. Some have their own systems and monitoring systems and CRMs and that kind of thing. Others are using spreadsheets. So we really were looking at this as an opportunity for businesses who may already be GS1 members or may already be utilising the NPC as a way to capture and gather that data. But the reporting will still occur through the reporting tool and still against a packaging sustainability framework. So that should be okay. Murray and Mark, did you have anything else to add in relation to that, I guess, data collection and opportunity there for the NPC to support businesses with reporting?
Yeah, from our perspective, I guess if a business is using the NPC, they've kind of already got that data collection discipline and it facilitates that. And I guess just having those extra attributes added to the NPC just makes it part of a process that's already embedded in many businesses. So that's really just looking for another way to support your reporting requirements in terms of APCO through a tool that people are using. They've got the discipline. It's just about adding some additional attributes to it. So that's really the thinking behind it as well, I think.
I think it's adding the business as usual type of approach too. So that particularly for existing NPC suppliers, they're adding new items. They're making changes. They're making updates for a range of different aspects of the product. Sustainability and the packaging just has to become part of that process. So it doesn't become a task that's done once a year when the report's due. It's something that's happening in real time as the products develop.
And I think that's a really important piece in general about data collection, is continually updating and keeping track of that so that it's not all in one go at the last minute. We've had another question coming here from Tim. So will packaging providers or manufacturers and suppliers be able to add packaging products so that everyone using the product doesn't need to add it in? So essentially talking about that, I believe, Mark, you were saying the M2M side of things. Will there be opportunity for suppliers to communicate that packaging data with their customers?
So we're talking about packaging suppliers. They're providing the information on the packaging through to their users of that packaging.
Yes.
That's an interesting use case. And then Murray, maybe you want to jump in, but from my perspective, just thinking about it, the way we track this information is by using a GTIN. So I guess if there is that packaging has a GTIN associated with it, then we could have a packaging supplier use the National Product Catalogue, capture the packaging detail against the units of packaging and share that with the manufacturer, who's then using the packaging in a product that they're supplying onto a retailer. It really goes to how we record the different elements of packaging through a GTIN. So I guess I can see a way that could be used, and that's a really interesting use case. I think it probably requires a little bit more exploration because, to be honest with you, it's not something I've really considered until that question's been asked, but it probably needs a bit more thought. As I kind of think through it and talk, I can see ways in which we could do that, but I think it probably needs a bit more exploration. I don't know, Murray, if you've got anything that you'd add to
Yeah, look, I think that'd be relatively difficult to become. Generally, a supplier pushes information out to their customers, their recipients. So in effect, they have to become a recipient plus a supplier, which is a little bit, it can be done, but it's relatively, for the value, it's probably quite a significant task for the benefits to, it might be better if the standard approach is taken by the source manufacturers to put things out in a consistent format so that people can take that data and enter it into the NPC or enter it into the APCO reports, whatever, as opposed to trying to have the full end-to-end process, which might be good in the long run, but it's probably a phase 2 at best.
I guess in that case, that kind of leads in really well to the next question. So the question is it possible for members to export the data from the NPC? But from that discussion, is it also possible for members or businesses to import into the NPC using an existing spreadsheet? So if they were potentially getting that data from a supplier in a spreadsheet, they could then upload it in the NPC. Is that a possibility as well?
The export function with the NPC is probably how I would probably see the largest or the fastest way to start using the data. A standard export functionality, a standard export Excel template, and that's used by many of the suppliers to load and view data. So that's a very common way, and that's probably the easiest way to get data out when the annual report's ready to be run is to do the export out of the NPC and then look at the sustainability fields or the packaging fields. As far as uploading, it's more of an add situation. You could certainly take those fields and add it to your existing one. So you could do in effect, you do an export and back an import again, making the update. So yes, that can be done without too many challenges.
Thanks, Murray. And then we've got another question here from Amy. Will these new sustainability requirements as part of the NPC be made mandatory within the NPC itself?
Our thoughts were that we would have an opt-in situation for APCO members. So when an APCO member is entering data, that they would be prompted by some business validation rules to enter the sustainability fields. But we wouldn't have it for all suppliers because we know that not all suppliers are APCO members and not all suppliers need to fill in that data. So at this stage, that would be our approach. It ultimately gets back to also what some of our key recipients. I know they're looking very actively at some of the sustainability and packaging details as well. But at this stage, we'd be probably looking at an opt-in for APCO members.
And I guess, Amy, from APCO's perspective, it wouldn't at this stage be something that we would look to make mandatory for members to have to utilise the NPC as the data collection source. If they have alternative data collection methods, that's obviously fine. I'm not too sure which direction that question was going, whether it was within the NPC or if it's in relation to APCO member requirements. But I guess both perspectives there as well. So that's all the questions that have come through the chat box. If anyone else does have anything else, please do pop it in there. But Mark, I might just hand back over to you for now.
I think we actually had a session for questions and discussion after we talked through the data exchange model. So I think we've kind of done what we were intending to do next. I think if there are no further questions, I think the next steps that we had kind of agreed as part of this was just to collate the feedback that we get from everyone who's attended these 2 sessions. And that's why I say, even if you don't have the feedback right now, if you can send that through, I guess, to the APCO team when you've had a chance to think about it. And if something that you haven't considered today comes up and you'd like to provide that, we really do encourage that, because obviously we want to be guided in terms of development by your feedback. And I guess just to re-emphasize the fact, and I guess to go to the last question, I don't think we'd ever mandate using the NPC to capture this information. It's just one of those options where we recognize that it's just going to introduce efficiency for people that are already using the National Product Catalogue. And there may be people who aren't using it at the moment who look at it and say, well, this might provide some efficiencies to us. We might want to start considering how we exchange not just this information, but other information. So by no means would it be mandated. It's just really an additional way of providing that information and leveraging processes that are already in place. And I think you've seen a large level of crossover. About 30% of people are APCO and GS1 members using the National Product Catalogue. So for those members, it probably does provide something to really think about. And as I say, that's really going to help us if we can get the feedback from you guys around that. But also people that aren't using it, if you've got questions, feedback, we welcome that. It might just give us a bit of a different perspective on and other things that we can consider. So I think that was our next steps part of things. We've gone through a lot of the questions. So I guess it's part of a process of really engaging with APCO members and getting feedback and working out if we want to implement this, how we go about implementing that. And I think that was really all that we wanted to get from today, Alison. I'm not sure if you had anything else that you are looking at. I think we've got a poll that we wanted to try and distribute as well and get some feedback that way. But I think from my perspective, that's covered most of what I think we wanted to achieve today. Yes,
we've just popped up the poll now. So if you are able to, there's only 3 questions there and they're each yes or no responses. We'd really value your feedback, both APCO and the GS1 team, to really understand, what we can do in this space moving forward. I think, as Mark put forward earlier on in his presentation, data collection is becoming a bigger and bigger thing. And at APCO, we have a saying, what gets measured gets managed. So it's important for you to know, what your packaging is made out of, if it contains recycled content, what materials you're using, to be able to find those potential sustainable alternatives or options for your packaging. And so this is an alternative data collection method that, again, we've seen alignment in our membership bases. And the initial conversations between GS1 and APCO came about because APCO members had been in touch with us and had mentioned, hey, GS1, we're using GS1, is this an option for us? So there's definitely, I guess, appetite within our membership base for something like this. But I think it's really important, I guess, to be collecting that data because it is so critical, especially for the 2025 national packaging targets as we work towards that, which Chella had mentioned earlier on in the session as well. So we've still got the poll open. There's, again, still a few people working through those, so we'll keep it open for now. But Chella, Mark, Murray, did you have anything else you were wanting to add?
Not really from our side, Alison. Just if anyone has questions and they want to direct them to us, you've got our details. I'm not sure if there's another way that you'd like to share those, but as I've said, I'm happy for our details to be shared and for people to reach out directly to us with questions if they have questions that they'd like to ask us after today.
We will definitely, after the session, we'll be sending through an email and we can include those details as well. And if you do have any questions, feel free to get in touch. And if either for APCO or for GS1, we can pass them on to both Mark and Murray to support there. Murray, any last points from you?
No, I think I'm good. Thanks, Alison.
Maybe just from us, just to say thanks for everyone attending. It's really valuable to us to get the opportunity to kind of share the ideas with you, get your feedback. So we welcome that and we thank you for your time today.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Murray. And Chella, anything else from you as well?
No, I'll just echo what Mark and Murray have already said. Thanks for attending today and providing all your feedback.
Chella. I did want to just say thank you to Mark, Murray and Chella for presenting today. I think it's really valuable, again, as I said, for organisations to be collecting data and this is a potential option for them. So if anyone does, again, have any feedback or questions, please do get in touch. If you haven't yet filled in the poll, please pop in your responses there. As Chella said in the chat box, we really value your feedback. But otherwise, wishing everyone a great weekend and a good rest of the day. So thanks all. Bye.
Thanks, Alison. Thanks, Chella. Thanks, everybody.